Tonight on Day One. Nearly 200,000 Americans dead from AIDS.
Oh, there's no question in my mind that this is the great medical tragedy of all time.
John Hockenberry's report, A State of Emergency. Did AIDS research take a wrong turn that may never lead to a cure?
I have two textbooks. Here it says AIDS is produced by HIV. Is that a fact?
Most definitely not. That is a conjecture. It's a hypothesis, not an established fact.
Is HIV the sole cause of AIDS? Also tonight, Americans fought to Forrest Sawyer, Sheila McVicker, John Hockenberry, Michelle McQueen, Jay Shadler, Lisa McCree, and special correspondent Jeff Greenfield. This is Day One.
Good evening. I'm Forrest Sawyer, and this is Day One. In the middle of a worldwide tragedy, it offered the first glimmer of hope. AZT, a treatment for AIDS. Does it really help people live longer or hasten their death?
We know it helps people based on dozens upon dozens upon dozens of studies.
I firmly believe that AZT not only does not extend life, but in many cases shortens life.
It made one company a lot of money.
They wanted to cash in, and the market was eager for a drug.
From ABC News, Forrest Sawyer, Sheila McVicker, John Hockenberry, Michelle McQueen, John McKenzie, and Jeff Greenfield. This is Day One. Still to come on Day One. Tens of thousands of people are pinning their only hope on this drug. But could it be dangerous or even deadly?
We compromised safety when we approved the drug when we did.
Still to come on Day One. It's a weapon against a devastating disease. But was it rushed to market without proper testing?
We dilly-dallied with a class of drugs that was patently useless.
The riskiest thing is to be unwilling to take any risks.
Hundreds of thousands of patients are taking that risk. Is it worth it? The story when Day One continues.
Ever since we first heard about AIDS and the virus called HIV, researchers have been desperate to find a treatment, any treatment. One drug, AZT, promised to at least help people with HIV live longer. It seemed to be the first breakthrough, the first hint that AIDS could be treated. The government and the company that developed AZT campaigned to get patients on the drug as soon as they were diagnosed. But it turns out that may have been a hasty and perhaps even deadly course of action. Here's John Hockenberry.
It was not the best of times when Steve and Cheryl Nagel's daughter came into the world. Romania, where they went to adopt a child, was emerging from a civil war. In the midst of chaos, they found a 3-week-old girl.
I don't know why I picked Lindsey. I just felt her kind of a chemistry. As I was carrying her around the room a little bit, kind of considering, should I adopt this child, she woke up, and then she kind of like smiled.
They brought her back to their home in Minneapolis, Minnesota. No more orphanages. A real family for Lindsey. But then everything fell apart. They discovered that their 3-month-old infant was infected with HIV.
I was so uneducated about HIV and AIDS. You know, it just never even crossed my mind that it would come to my door, and here it did. So I was thinking right away that my daughter was going to die.
Which is what any parent would think. If you test positive for HIV, it's only a matter of time. AIDS, and then death.
I thought, well, we'll return all the shower gifts and it'll be enough to pay for her funeral. Maybe we can buy her a little kind of a dress. And I had pictured her in her little coffin. It was really a dirty trick.
But if doctors didn't have a cure, the Nagels desperately wanted to find something to keep their daughter alive as long as possible. Doctors said they had something that fights HIV, a drug called AZT. She took the drug for 2 years. The effects of AZT on Lindsey Nagel were dramatic.
We would wake up to hear her shriek, screaming. This wasn't just a baby crying, "Mommy, Mommy." She wasn't even crying. She was shrieking in pain. And I'd run into her room. I thought, you know, somebody must be jabbing needles up her legs or something. And she'd be laying like this on her bed and going like this on her thighs, pressing down to her knees.
What was wrong here? The Nagels were just following the directions of the experts, the doctors, the government, and Burroughs Wellcome, the company that makes AZT. But AZT was apparently making Lindsey sick. The Nagels decided to find out more. They wanted to know what it was that AZT was doing, why it had been approved, and if it could really keep their daughter alive longer than doing nothing. To their horror, the Nagels came to believe that AZT is at best an uncertain therapy, and at worst a dangerous poison, that the government had been steamrolled into approving it, and that the company, Burroughs Wellcome, had aggressively capitalized on a public panic about AIDS. It turned out they were not the only ones who felt that way.
The government was pushing the concept that early treatment was likely to have a survival benefit, which they had as yet not shown.
Totally illegitimate claim, in your view.
They just didn't have any evidence.
In 1990, Dr. John Hamilton, chief of infectious disease at the Durham, North Carolina Veterans Administration Hospital Center, discovered that in some cases, AZT might slow the progression of HIV to full-blown AIDS. Hopeful news. But there was also bad news.
What happened once they got AIDS?
Once they got AIDS, in comparison to the group who received AZT later, they progressed more rapidly to death.
So your statistics showed that when they took AZT earlier on in their HIV infection, once they got to the point where they developed AIDS, they really just went off the map.
Yes.
That's not what's supposed to happen. AZT was never meant to be a cure, but it is supposed to let you live longer, even years longer. And Burroughs Wellcome, the gigantic pharmaceutical company that makes the drug, says it has many studies to show the benefits of AZT, including a recently published Australian study. So were they concerned about Dr. Hamilton's VA study? Yes, they were.
A person at Burroughs Wellcome called and suggested that we stop the study.
Stop a study?
But we declined to cease on the basis of what we thought were scientifically valid points.
AZT's jump from laboratory to market took Dr. Dave Barry from the laboratory to the executive suite. The scientist who headed the AZT project for Burroughs Wellcome is now a vice president. Barry says he didn't tell Dr. Hamilton to stop his study.
And I certainly didn't tell him to keep quiet. No one I know told him to keep quiet.
But the company did contact doctors treating AIDS all across America. Were they warning them about the possibility that AZT might not, as advertised, extend life? No. Burroughs Wellcome was warning doctors to beware of Dr. Hamilton's study.
Let's talk about their criticism of your study. They sent a letter to virtually every clinician who might have prescribed AZT, warning them about your study, correct?
Yes, they did. They misrepresented the results of our trial. And in fact, all of those associated with our study not only thought that was inappropriate, but were resentful that they would have done this.
There isn't even a mention of Dr. Hamilton's study in the information provided to patients and physicians. This is no small point. Doctors rely on the information provided in the so-called package insert.
I believe the VA study has been widely published and disseminated.
But it's not in the product insert.
Because we disagree with the statistical analysis, I'm not sure whether we put that in the
It's not in the package insert.
With Dr. Hamilton's scientific concerns dealt with, the company went about the business of selling drugs. And what a business it is. In 1992, worldwide sales of AZT were almost $400 million. But in a major blow to the company, Dr. Hamilton's findings have now been bolstered. In the largest, most complete study to date, European researchers have found that taking AZT early did not prolong life. We asked Dr. Berry if Burroughs Wellcome had any doubts about its product in light of these studies.
Now, if you wish to focus on 2 studies, that's your privilege. But it's incumbent upon you and your program to present all of the data with equal weighting and not focus on 2 studies that support some potentially preformed concepts you have about the drug.
Potentially preformed concepts I have?
Yes.
Well, who has the burden of proof here? I mean, there's problems with your original study.
Well, I think...
Where's the truth here?
Well, I think what we're trying to get to is a balance.
The balance Dr. Berry is referring to is mainly from the company's own studies.
We know it helps people based on dozens upon dozens upon dozens of studies. We know what the toxicity of the drug is, based again upon dozens of studies. We publish regularly. Investigators out there publish regularly.
How did AZT get approved anyway?
FDA, no delay! FDA, no delay! FDA, no delay!
6 years ago, at the bleakest moment of the AIDS crisis, with no cure and no hope, people were pressuring the government to do something. Burroughs Wellcome thought it had that something. And with the help of one flawed, rushed, and never-to-be-repeated study, it got AZT approved.
In a crisis, is it more or less important to go by the book?
We went by the book in doing the studies. We were very innovative in doing a study with an independent data safety and monitoring board that could be done well and still be done ethically.
There was so much missing, and there was so much need for more information that wasn't available, that any other situation before or after would have been automatically occurring that the drug would be disqualified from further analysis until that data is brought for us to evaluation.
Dr. Yitzhak Brook headed the Food and Drug Administration's 11-person AZT Advisory Committee. At the time, the majority of the panel believed that the potential benefits of AZT outweighed the problems of the study. Dr. Brook disagreed, then and now.
The opportunity was lost that day because we had no way of scrutinizing the data, learning about side effect, and it was at the mercy of the drug company. They wanted to cash in quickly, before other competition will come in. They wanted to capture the market, and the market was eager for a drug, so it was a perfect combination. I felt we compromised science, and we compromised safety when we approved the drug when we did.
Dr. David Kessler is the head of the FDA. He agrees that the study that led to the approval of AZT was flawed, but he defends the decision as one that had to be made.
We still don't have all the answers about AZT even today. But the riskiest thing that I think we could do when we're dealing with a disease, I mean, as terrible as AIDS, is to be unwilling to take any risks. The hard part about this job is that we constantly make decisions on the basis of limited data.
Clearly, the drug was approved under very shady circumstances, and a tremendous amount of money is riding on this issue for Burroughs Wellcome.
Dr. Charles Thomas is a prominent molecular biologist. He's an expert in the study of human cells. He does believe that AZT can probably keep a small amount of the virus from reproducing, but at a cost. It can batter your immune system to a point where it cannot fight off disease. Isn't that the same thing that HIV may be doing? Yes. For Burroughs Wellcome, he says, It's all about money, not health.
I think these people are drinking their own whiskey, as we used to say. You know, the human mind is a very inventive organ, and particularly when it's lubricated by money. There's almost no argument that a bunch of smart guys can't support, given a little time, ingenuity, and resources.
I'm very proud of those studies. I'm proud of the patients, and I'm proud of the academic investigators who had to do an awful lot of work dealing with a very, very devastating and lethal disease under very difficult conditions. Yes, that is good science, and I'm proud of it.
It does surprise me to hear sensible people talking nonsense. Yes, it does. I think there should be. I think they should be penalized for misrepresentation.
We raised a number of these issues with the Food and Drug Administration, and in a letter to Day One, the FDA agreed that Dr. Hamilton's study criticizing AZT should be included in the information given to doctors. They agreed that Dr. Hamilton's study was misrepresented by the company, and they agreed that the original study which led to the approval of AZT was flawed. So what's their reason for keeping AZT on the market?
AZT is not the answer in dealing with AIDS. AZT is not the answer in treating AIDS, and to say otherwise would be misleading, but it would also be misleading to say that AZT doesn't have any benefit. Its benefit is real, but it is time limited.
Hardly a ringing endorsement, but it is one that is reflected by many physicians who, despite all the questions, still use AZT.
But I believe that there is a role for these drugs, and one has to be circumspect about how to use them. But in many patients, there were objective signs of improvement.
Dr. Jeffrey Green is an infectious disease specialist at New York University Medical Center. He sees more than 300 HIV-infected patients. While he has prescribed AZT for over 6 years, even he is still waiting for good scientific evidence about the claims made for the drug.
The critical issue and the center issue of this piece that you're doing should be whether the drug has been effective or not, and that is difficult to answer. I really don't know.
I firmly believe that AZT not only does not extend life, but in many cases shortens life.
Michael Callan has had AIDS for 12 years. A crusader against AZT, he has never taken the drug. Callan points out that until 1991, of the more than $420 million spent by the National Institutes of Health, 80% went to studies on AZT. The money that could have been used to develop other therapies, he says, was spent on AZT and kept other solutions from getting a fair test.
I will die as a result of the AZT juggernaut. I have been lucky enough or stubborn enough or whatever to survive full-blown AIDS for almost 12 years. It would be nice if there was a payoff, if after 12 years I was around for the treatment that could make a difference. But there is no treatment that can make a difference for me because we dilly-dallied with a class of drugs that was patently useless.
If another drug could have helped Michael Callan, no one can say. But what about the little Romanian child with the HIV virus, Lindsey Nagel?
Yeah, there's another button.
Her parents gradually came to believe they were all involved in some kind of flawed experiment no one told them about.
We had kind of talked to each other about, you know, we keep shoving this crap down this kid's throat, and she's completely healthy. And then the leg cramps started at night. And during this time, we didn't really notice it on a day-to-day basis, but Lindsey had lost all of her muscle tone. Her legs had just kind of, and her arms had just kind of turned into...
Slab.
Well, it was just like flesh and bone. There really wasn't any muscle there.
Good job. You're almost done.
The Nagels eventually ended the experiment on their daughter. They took their unused prescription, put it up in the closet, and never gave it to Lindsey again.
Well, I have a strong conviction that we did the right thing, and that's verified every day because, well, especially When we first took Lindsey off the AZT, her leg cramps ceased, and she started eating about twice as much as she had earlier and gained about 5 pounds within 2 months. The main thing, though, was that she stopped screaming in the middle of the night.
John, with all of these questions about AZT, should the government take a fresh look at this drug?
Well, actually, last summer, the National Institutes of Health did take a look at the conflicting evidence that AZT use by HIV-infected individuals can prolong life, the claims and the counterclaims. But what they essentially came up with was a strategy for doctors and patients to simply figure it out for themselves.
They're out there on their own.
That's right.
Okay, John Hockenberry, thanks very much, John. We'll be back in just a moment. That is our broadcast for tonight. I'm Forrest Sawyer. For all of us here at ABC News, good night.
One teenager's dead, another injured after trying a trick out of a football movie. Hello, I'm Angela Storr. We'll have the story after Monday Night Football.
For a transcript, please send $7 to 1535 Grant Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203.
Day One is a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.